Do you know what it feels like to be told you're no longer capable of living your own life by your own child? They called it temporary. That's the word my daughter used, temporary. As if I couldn't read between the lines. As if I hadn't commanded men younger and stronger than Derek across sand dunes and minefields while she was still in diapers. "My back can't take it anymore, Dad," she'd said, standing in my kitchen while holding her phone like a shield. "You need medical attention, monitoring, real care." It had only been 2 weeks since the stroke. Mild, they said. A small warning. Enough to leave me fumbling with my left hand and tongue-tied for a few seconds at a time. Not enough to take my mind. But that didn't seem to matter to Stephanie. Or her husband Derek, who kept checking his smartwatch while pretending to care. He's a dermatologist, by the way. Drives a white Mercedes with heated seats in Tucson. I told them I'd be fine, that I'd already arranged a part-time nurse to stop by every morning, that I could still make my own damn coffee and remember to take my blood thinners. They just nodded. You know that nod people give you when they've already made up their minds. 3 days later, they showed up with a suitcase and a printed pamphlet that smelled like fresh ink. Sunfield Care. A nice generic name. The kind that says nothing and means even less. "It's a clean place," Dad Stephanie said, avoiding my eyes, as Derek wheeled my suitcase into the back of their car. "There's staff meals, a recreation room," she trailed off. Derek filled in the silence. "And it's only temporary until you're back to full strength." Temporary. That word again. I didn't fight. Maybe I should have. But when you've served 30 years in the military, 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Kuwait, you learn to pick your battles. And at that moment, I was tired. Not weak, mind you. Just bone-tired. The kind of tired that comes from realizing your child has stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a project. Sunfield was exactly what I expected. A long, single-story brick building that looked more like an abandoned strip mall than a care facility. Inside, the air was thick with disinfectant and resignation. The kind of place where clocks tick louder than conversations. They put me in room 17. 1 twin bed, 1 window that faced the parking lot, and a single drawer. No flag, no pictures, no past. Stephanie helped me unpack while Derek waited by the door like a valet. She placed a photo of her mother, my late wife, Ruth, on the nightstand. "I'll check in tomorrow," she said, brushing some imaginary lint off her blouse. "Just rest, okay?" "Sure," I replied. "You two take care." They left quickly. I watched through the window as they walked to their car. Derek opened the trunk and hoisted in 2 large duffel bags. Stephanie took out sunglasses. They were laughing. That's when it hit me. They weren't going home. The next morning, the front desk nurse handed me a note. "Hi, Dad. We had to make a quick decision. Derek's medical conference in Madrid got extended into a 2-week Europe trip. We'll call you from Paris. Love, Steph." That's how I learned they were in Europe. They called it a last-minute decision. But they had 2 matching duffels, printed itineraries, and left the photo of Ruth on my nightstand like a memorial. I sat in that stiff-backed chair looking out at the lot where their car had been. And I realized I'd been placed here not out of love, but for convenience. They'd taken my house, the one I'd paid off with 3 decades of discipline and military pension, and were getting it ready to sell. They had access to one of my bank accounts, the joint one Steph insisted we open in case of emergencies. Probably paying my stay here with my own money while booking hotel suites in Florence. And you know what made me angrier than anything? It wasn't that they lied. It was that they didn't even think I'd notice. The second night at Sunfield, I couldn't sleep. Not from pain, not from noise, but from something worse, the silence of being discarded. I woke up before sunrise, something my body still does after all those years on military bases. The hallway smelled like wet carpet and hand sanitizer. I wandered down toward the dining area just to stretch my legs. That's when I overheard them two staff members chatting near the supply closet. Mr. Carlyle. "Oh, he's on the basic plan," one of them said. "Just meds and meals," the other replied. "No PT, no enrichment program, no memory wellness, no transport service. Cheapest coverage. Cheapest coverage." That phrase echoed in my head like a ricochet round. I didn't say anything, just turned and walked back to my room. They knew I was still sharp. They'd sat through my stories, my opinions, my warnings about letting their daughter marry a man who values golf clubs more than principles. But now that I had a limp and some shakiness in my left hand, suddenly I was a liability to be parked somewhere. I wasn't upset about needing care. I was upset they chose the minimum and acted like it was mercy. I opened the little drawer on my nightstand and took out the checkbook Stephanie insisted I stop using a year ago. "Everything's online now, Dad," she said. "Let me manage the accounts. Less for you to worry about." But what she didn't know is, I never shut down the veterans' only fund I kept from my final years in service, the one Ruth and I used to call our desert money. Deployment bonuses, hazard pay, retirement bumps. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Untouched. Offline. And still earning. I logged into the account that night using the old laptop they let me bring. Wi-Fi at Sunfield was slow, but good enough to remind me I still had options. 2 days later, I got another note from Steph, this time via email. "We've had to extend the trip. Derek has a surprise speaking event in Geneva. Don't worry, we'll check in again soon." They were now in Switzerland. Meanwhile, I was eating steamed chicken that tasted like wet cardboard, while my legs stiffened from lack of therapy, and no one asked me how I slept. On the 5th day, I met Leo Bramley. He sat across from me in the rec room, doing a crossword puzzle in ink, shaking his head at the TV. "You military?" he asked without looking up. I nodded. He tilted his chin toward my posture. "Figures, straight spine, still call people sir even when they don't deserve it." We talked. Leo was a former federal judge. Widowed, no kids. Knew the system better than anyone I'd ever met. And he had one piece of advice for me: if you're not dead yet, don't act like you are. They want you to fold, to accept this chair, this meal, this schedule. But you don't have to. It was Leo who first told me about Golden Pines residence up in Flagstaff. A friend of mine moved there last year, he said. Said it was like going from a bus stop to a private jet. I looked it up that night. Golden Pines wasn't a nursing home. It was something else entirely. Studio apartments, private gardens, medical teams trained in veteran care, a library, a music room, even a veterans wing with plaques honoring service. They had a suite open, the cost high, but not higher than the respect I'd already lost by staying in this place one day longer. Now all I needed was a way out, and someone who knew how to navigate the legal landmines Stephanie had quietly planted. Because I saw it now, she wasn't just handling my bills out of kindness. She was consolidating control. That's when he appeared. A week into my stay, I saw a man in a charcoal gray suit speaking with the head nurse. He stood straighter than the rest, asked real questions, took notes. not a relative, not staff. I caught up with him near the vending machine. "You looking to file a class action, or just audit the place?" I asked, motioning toward the clipboard in his hand. He smiled, calm, direct, unshaken. "Neither," he said. "I'm Peter Langston, elder law attorney. I do independent assessments for families and occasionally for folks who've been pushed aside." "Raymond Carlisle," I said, shaking his hand. "Former U.S. Marine, current occupant of room 17, where dreams go to die." Peter chuckled. We sat, talked, compared notes. I told him everything about the account Steph had access to, the basic plan, the sudden Europe trip, the hidden fund I still controlled. He listened like a man who'd heard this all before and was tired of watching it happen. "You have more rights than they're letting on," he said. "What if they contest my capacity?" I asked. "Then we get you an independent medical evaluation," Peter replied. "We build the paper trail now, so you're untouchable later." I leaned back, feeling something stir in my chest. Not fear, not sadness. Purpose. "I don't want revenge," I told him. "I want peace. And dignity." Peter nodded. "Then let's make that happen. I've always believed in rules. You don't make it through 3 decades in the Marines without developing a healthy respect for systems chains of command and the quiet, sacred rhythm of structure. You wake at 0500, you shave, you check your boots. You move with purpose. You stay sharp. But what they never teach you in the Corps is how to handle betrayal when it comes not from the outside, but from your own blood. That was the hardest part. It wasn't the food at Sunfield Care, bland as it was, wasn't the fluorescent lights or the wheezing air vents. It wasn't even the sad shuffle of slippers down sterile hallways. No, it was the realization that my daughter didn't trust me to live. She trusted me to serve, to build, to provide, but not to decide. And that cuts deeper than any field wound. Peter returned 2 days after our first meeting. This time we met in the dusty corner of the small library at Sunfield, a sad collection of dog-eared romance novels and Reader's Digests from 2007. He brought papers, a quiet confidence, and something else I hadn't felt in weeks, a way out. "I spoke to a doctor I trust," Peter said, sliding a manila folder across the table. "She's a neurologist out of Tempe. Independent, no ties to the facility or your family. She's agreed to do a full capacity assessment." "Is it necessary?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Peter nodded gently. "You're lucid. You're sharp. But your daughter holds partial custodial rights based on a hospital form you signed while recovering from your stroke. It's vague, but vague can be dangerous in court. This will clean that up." I opened the folder. Medical forms, consent waivers, a short questionnaire. I signed each page slowly with deliberate pressure, making sure every letter of my name stood proud on the line Raymond Joseph Carlisle. Peter packed the folder and stood. "We'll schedule the exam tomorrow. After that, it's your call. You can stay here or we begin preparing the move to Golden Pines." That night, I sat on the edge of the thin mattress in room 17, staring at the only personal item I had left, Ruth's picture. Her kind eyes behind those gold-rimmed glasses, the crease at the corner of her mouth from years of patient smiling. I whispered to her like I used to when nights got long on base, "I'm not done yet, Ruth. I'm going to walk out of here with my back straight, just like I promised." The exam went smoother than I thought. The doctor, Dr. Nadine Cross, met me in a private conference room that Peter had arranged through a third party completely off the record from Sunfield. She asked questions, memory logic, reasoning orientation. I answered each one with precision. She even chuckled when I recited the Marine Rifleman's Creed from memory. "You've got a steel trap mind, Mr. Carlyle," she said, "and a stubborn streak to match." I just smiled. That's what kept me alive more than once, Doc. By that weekend, Peter had the full report in hand. Mr. Carlyle demonstrates full cognitive function, independent judgment, and the capacity to make legal and financial decisions on his own behalf. I held the report in both hands like a soldier reading honorable discharge papers. "This," I said quietly, "is freedom." Peter looked at me across the table. "Now comes the harder part." "What's that?" He leaned in. "Tell in your daughter." I shook my head. "Not yet." Peter didn't argue. He understood. Men like us don't declare war with cannons. We prefer a clean extraction. Sunfield Care didn't even notice I'd stopped attending the group activities. No one asked why I hadn't shown up for the daily bingo games. No one cared that I skipped the tapioca pudding. I became what the staff expected, another quiet old man slowly becoming furniture, which was perfect. Because while they thought I was fading, I was laying the groundwork. Late at night, I mapped the logistics. I called Golden Pines directly using Peter's secure number and confirmed availability. I read every line of the agreement Peter forwarded me, lifetime residence, in exchange for transferring the deed to my house and a fixed portion of my military fund. The terms were clear. The contract was solid, and most of all, it was mine to sign. There was one moment, though, that gave me pause. It was when I opened the scanned copy of the house deed, the one in my name for 27 years. The house where I taught Stephanie to ride a bike, where Ruth planted roses that still bloomed every spring. Transferring it meant accepting that I'd never return. I placed Ruth's photo on the table next to the screen. It was just a house, I whispered. You were the home. And with that, I clicked sign. The morning I left Sunfield Care. The sky over Tucson was the color of ash, not quite gray, not quite white. The kind of sky that made you squint and wonder if something was about to happen. It was. At 10:00 sharp, Peter Langston pulled up in a black sedan, the kind with leather seats and a quiet engine. He stepped out in a crisp navy blazer holding a single leather folder. The nurse at the front desk barely looked up as I walked past her with my duffel bag. "Going somewhere, Mr. Carlyle?" she asked, chewing on the cap of her pen. "Just meeting my attorney," I said, nodding at Peter behind me. "Private consultation." She didn't press. Why would she? I was just another line item in a stack of forms. To them, the only difference between a resident and a room number was how often you needed help getting out of bed. Peter opened the door for me like a chauffeur. I sat down, pulled the belt across my chest, and didn't look back. That was the last time I saw room 17. On the road to Flagstaff, the desert opened up like a promise. Saguaros on both sides, mountains in the distance. The farther we drove, the more I felt my spine realigning, not just physically, but in spirit. "I took care of the last wire transfer this morning," Peter said, as we passed a faded billboard that read, "Be kind." "It's hot out here. Golden Pines is ready for you." "And Stephanie?" I asked, eyes still on the open road. "She doesn't know," he said. "You said you wanted to handle that part." I nodded slowly. "I have something in mind." We arrived at Golden Pines residence just before noon. Even from the driveway, the difference was stark. It didn't smell like bleach or canned peas. It smelled like fresh lavender and wood polish. The entrance was framed by two wide oaks. There were wind chimes hanging from the porch beams, soft, delicate, intentional. Veronica Clark, Director of Community Relations, met us at the door. Tall, graceful, wearing a pinstriped dress and flat shoes. She smiled like she'd been expecting me for years. "Mr. Carlyle," she said, offering her hand. "We're so happy you're joining our community. Peter told us you'd fit right in." I didn't say much, just nodded, soaking it in. They walked me to my new apartment, Unit B14, second floor, corner view of the garden. It had a balcony, a leather reading chair, a private kitchenette, and a bathroom with fixtures nicer than any hotel I'd stayed in. And most importantly, it had a door that locked from the inside. After settling in, Peter handed me my phone. "Ready?" I turned it on. 12 voicemails from Stephanie, 3 texts from Derek, 1 email with the subject line, "Where are you?" I smiled. I opened the message app, typed slowly, carefully, every word chosen like a scalpel. "I've made new arrangements. I've reassigned the house. I'll explain in person when you return. No need to worry, I'm quite comfortable." I hit send. Then I turned off the phone and dropped it in the drawer next to my bed. Let it stew. Let them feel, if only for a moment, what it's like to be left without answers. That evening, Veronica invited me to the courtyard social. A small gathering, just a few residents chatting over iced tea and piano music. I declined politely, not because I didn't want to go, but because I wanted to sit, alone, just for one night, and let the silence be mine. I poured myself a glass of water from the kitchen tap, opened the sliding balcony door, and watched the wind move through the pines. A hawk soared in the distance. Somewhere below, I heard a woman's laugh, rich and unhurried. The next morning, I woke before the sun. My body still ran on marine time. I made a pot of real coffee, not the brown water they served at Sunfield. I showered with real water pressure, not that pathetic drizzle they called senior safe. And then I dressed not in hospital socks and faded sweats, but in my cleanest pressed shirt and khakis, the same kind I wore when I picked Ruth up for church all those Sundays ago. At 9 Tachirko, I turned my phone back on. 37 missed calls. I didn't answer any of them, but I did send one final message. I'm at Golden Pines residence. If you want to talk, you'll have to come here. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It was a boundary. For the first time in my life, I had drawn one. And for the first time, it would hold. They arrived before lunch. I was sitting by the window in my new apartment at Golden Pines, coffee cup in hand, watching a hummingbird dart between the lavender bushes down below. I hadn't seen one of those in years. Not in Tucson. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps. Precise. Nervous. I stood, slowly placed the mug on the windowsill, and straightened my collar. Time to face the storm I'd started with one message. When I opened the door, Stephanie was standing there, winded hair frizzed from travel, clutching her phone like it might protect her from something. Derek was behind her suitcase in one-hand jacket, still folded over his arm, like he hadn't even unpacked since the airport. "Dad," she blurted out, not even waiting for me to speak. What is going on? I held the door open wider. "Come in." They stepped in hesitantly, as if unsure if they were allowed to. I noticed Derek's eyes scanning the apartment, the granite counters, the framed landscape paintings, the rich mahogany floors. He whistled under his breath. "This place is not what I expected." "No," I said. "It isn't." Stephanie turned toward me. Her face was flushed, eyes slightly puffy. She'd been crying or yelling. Maybe both. Dad, we came straight from the airport, she said. The minute I saw your text, I mean, you can't just move out of care. You had a stroke. You're not supposed to. I'm not supposed to, what I asked calmly. Think, walk, decide. She looked stunned. Derek shifted uncomfortably. We were worried, he interjected. You left Sunfield without telling anyone. We thought I told your receptionist, I said. I informed the facility I was meeting my lawyer. That was true. I just didn't tell you. Because frankly, Stephanie, you didn't ask how I was once in 10 days. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I gestured toward the sofa. Sit down. Or don't. I'm comfortable either way. They sat. Stephanie leaned forward, elbows on knees. Dad, we're confused. You said you reassigned the house. What does that mean? It means exactly what it says, I replied. I signed a lifetime residency contract with Golden Pines. In exchange, I transferred the deed to the house and a portion of my service savings. You what? Derek exploded, leaning forward. You gave away the house without talking to us. It was never your house, Derek. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Stephanie looked like she'd been slapped. But you said... You always said the house would stay in the family, that it would be part of what I cut in voice sharper now. What you were counting on after I died, is that what you meant? She blinked hard. No. That's not what You put me in a room with peeling linoleum and called it care, I said. You chose the cheapest package despite knowing I had the funds. Then you left the country. And now you're upset that I've decided to spend my own money on something better. Dad, we were trying to do what was best for everyone, she pleaded. Derek and I, we had plans. That's the problem, I said. You had plans with my money, without my say. Derek stood up, pacing. We made sacrifices too, you know. We dealt with your attitude, your stubbornness. We brought you to a safe place while we figured out next steps. You didn't bring me to safety, I replied, standing slowly to meet him eye to eye. You parked me, like an old truck with too many miles. He looked away. Stephanie was quieter now, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought you were happy there. No, sweetheart, I said gently but firmly. You hoped I wouldn't resist. A long silence followed. They were expecting something I could tell, an opening, a compromise, some sign that I was bluffing. I gave them none. Then softly I added, the paperwork's done. Golden Pines has my signature, my contract, and my story. Derek frowned. What story? I looked him straight in the eyes. The real one. Not the version where I'm a burden you graciously carried, but the one where a man realizes his daughter stopped seeing him as a father and started seeing him as a financial inconvenience. Stephanie's face crumpled. I didn't mean to, she whispered. I was scared, Dad. When you had the stroke, I panicked. I thought I'd lose you, and I didn't know how to manage everything at once. So I did what was easy. I nodded. That I believe. She reached out tentatively. Her hand touched mine. Can we visit you here? She asked, voice cracking. Yes, I said. As long as you come not as heirs in waiting, but as family. No expectations, no control. She squeezed my hand once, then let go. Derek hadn't said a word in several minutes. He stood by the bookshelf now, arms crossed, studying the spines like they'd reveal something about me. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the kind of quiet rage a man feels when he realizes the money he thought was waiting for him has walked off, and made its own decisions. Let me guess, he finally said, turning toward me. You found a lawyer who told you what you wanted to hear. Probably took a fat commission from this place for getting you to sign. I stared at him, unblinking. Peter Langston has more integrity than anyone else I've dealt with in the last decade. Derek scoffed. And I suppose he told you we were manipulating you. He didn't have to, I said quietly. You did that all on your own. He looked at Stephanie for support. She didn't move. Let's not do this, she whispered. Not again. But Derek wasn't done. Do you have any idea what you've done? That house could have helped us pay off the rest of med school loans. We were going to use it as collateral for the clinic expansion, and now it's gone. I finished for him. No, it's not gone. It's paying for something I should have had all along, a decent, dignified end to a long, honest life. Derek's mouth twisted. And what about us? What about you? I asked. You're in your 40s, healthy, employed. You drive a German car and vacation in Europe. I think you'll survive without my property. He didn't reply. I turned back to Stephanie, who was still seated, hands folded tight in her lap. I don't hate you, Steph, I said softly. But I need you to hear me when I say this. I will not apologize for spending my own money on my own life. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. I know, Dad, she whispered. I really do. I gestured around the room, the oak bookshelf, the warm light filtering through the blinds, the hum of quiet jazz from the Bluetooth speaker in the corner. This is peace, I said. This is the first time since Ruth passed that I've felt like I'm not just waiting to die. Stephanie's lips quivered. I miss Mom, too. I sat down across from her, leaning forward slightly. Then you understand. She would have wanted this for me. That broke something in her. She reached up, wiped a tear, then gave a small nod, the kind people give when words aren't strong enough. Derek broke the silence again, but his voice was quieter now. Less venom, more confusion. So that's it then, he asked. It's all locked in. There's nothing left. There's a small fund I didn't touch, I replied. Burial expenses, some final arrangements. I left instructions with Peter. Beyond that, yes. I've allocated the rest to my care. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. I don't owe you a legacy, I said after a pause. If I choose to leave behind anything, it will be stories, not assets. That's the legacy I want. He looked down. Stephanie stood up, walked over. Gave me a hug this time, a real one. One that didn't feel like a transaction. I'm sorry, Dad, she said softly into my shoulder. Not for the money, for forgetting who you are. I held her close for a moment. I forgive you. She stepped back. Can we come back to visit? Of course, I said, but not with paperwork in your hands. Only your presence. She nodded, then turned to Derek. Come on. He looked like he wanted to say something else, one last jab, one final plea, but he didn't. He just gave me a stiff nod and followed her out the door. Before they left, I called after them. Steph. She turned. Next time, call me before you make plans with my name on them. She gave me a sad smile. Yes, sir. The door closed behind them. I returned to my chair by the window and picked up my coffee. It was still warm. Outside, the hummingbird had returned, darting from one flower to the next like it had somewhere to be. No hurry, but no hesitation either. Just movement. Freedom. And me, I wasn't angry. Not anymore. There was no victory here. No smug satisfaction. Just a firm, steady reclaiming of what had always been mine, the right to choose. The phone rang on the side table. I picked it up. It was the front desk. Mr. Carlyle, said Veronica's calm voice. We're hosting a small veterans lunch tomorrow. Just 6 of you. We'll have music stories and steak from a local butcher. Would you care to attend? Yes, I said after a moment. I think I'd like that very much. Wonderful, she replied. We'll have your name on a place card. After we hung up, I sat there a while longer. Just breathing, just being. They'd tried to box me in. But I'd found the door. And more importantly, I'd found the key. There's something no one tells you about getting older. It's not the wrinkles. It's not the stiffness in your knees. It's the slow erosion of being seen. One moment, you're the one holding the flashlight under the hood of the car. The next, they're speaking over you in a hospital hallway, making decisions for you. As if your spine stopped holding memories the moment your gait slowed down. But not here. Not at Golden Pines. Here I was, no one's burden. No one's project. No one's stepping stone to a beach house they couldn't afford without my death. Here I was, Mr. Carlyle again. Or better yet, just Raymond, if I wanted it that way. It started small. A knock at the door the morning after Stephanie and Derek left a staff member named Luis, bringing me a fresh towel and a printed schedule. Your orientation's today, sir, he said with a grin. You've got a lunch table reserved with the Veterans Circle. Casual dress code, but we take the stories seriously. I chuckled. Are the steaks as good as Veronica promised? Better, he said. We had a guy last month who was a mess cook in Vietnam. He gave the kitchen his secret marinade. Let's just say Tuesdays are no longer boring. At 11:45, I made my way down to the dining hall, not with a nurse escorting me, not with a walker, but walking proud, steady, button-down shirt tucked in boots polished. At the table sat 5 other men each, older, each distinct, each exuding that same quiet burn of men who had once worn uniforms and now wore stories on their faces. Luther Navy pilot, Marty Army mechanic, Harlan Air Force radar tech, Eugene Coast Guard rescue, and Donna Marine like me. We didn't shake hands. We didn't need to. Don just nodded once and said, You got the look. What look is that, I asked. The one you get after someone tries to write your ending and you take the pen back. Everyone laughed. For the next hour and a half, we swapped stories, not war stories, mind you. Life stories. Luther had 3 ex-wives and a coin collection that spanned 4 continents. Marty once got drunk in Bavaria and ended up fixing a tank in the wrong unit. Harlan could mimic any bird call in the state of Arizona and proved it between bites of steak. Eugene brought a guitar and strummed a few ragged bars of Johnny Cash. And me, I told them about Ruth, about Stephanie, about Sunfield. I didn't name names, but I didn't sugarcoat it either. I told them how it felt to be sent away for your own good, then left behind like a set of golf clubs gathering dust in the garage. They didn't interrupt. They didn't pity. They just understood. Don raised his glass sweet tea, not whiskey, and said, To reclaiming what they said we'd already lost. We clinked glasses, and just like that, something inside me clicked back into place. Not loudly, not like a bolt snapping, but like a gear sliding into alignment after months of grinding in the wrong direction. That afternoon, I visited the Golden Pines workshop, a wood-paneled room that smelled of cedar varnish and possibility. A younger staffer named Miles ran the space. Mid-30s, bearded, always wore flannel even in 90 degrees. "You ever work with your hands, Mr. Carlyle?" he asked. I smiled. "Only for 40 years. He handed me a block of oak and a rasp. "Then come remind us how it's done." For the next 2 hours, I carved. Not a masterpiece. Just a shape. A feel. Something old becoming new again. The rhythm was what I needed. The sound of grit on wood. The feeling of control over something, even if it was just a square of stubborn timber. When I returned to my apartment that evening, my hands smelled like sawdust and soap. My muscles ached in the best way. I hadn't felt that since I rebuilt Ruth's garden bench after the monsoon storm of '03. I poured a glass of water, sat down on the balcony, and for the first time in years, maybe decades, I thought, this is mine. This moment. This life. This peace. A few days later, Veronica stopped me in the hallway near the activity lounge. "Raymond," she said gently, tapping a clipboard. "The residence committee is organizing our monthly social memory circle. We were wondering if you'd be willing to share a story. Something from your early days. Doesn't have to be about the military." "Why me?" I asked, half joking. She smiled. "Because you don't speak to be heard. You speak when it matters. That's rare." I gave her a slow nod. "All right, I'll think of something." That night I sat with a notepad, not a laptop, not a phone, just paper and pen. I wrote down fragments, images, the moment I first saw Ruth in her yellow dress by the church steps, the long bus rides across baselines, the time Stephanie was 5 and drew a picture of me in uniform with Superdad written in shaky crayon above my head. I didn't write to impress anyone. I wrote to remember who I'd been, who I still was. On the night of the social memory circle, the room was packed. Dozens of residents, a few visiting family members, even some staff who stayed after their shifts. There was tea, shortbread cookies, and the gentle hum of an old record player spinning Sinatra in the corner. I took a seat near the front and waited my turn. When it came, I stood, adjusted the microphone, and began without notes. "I used to think dignity was about medals and folded flags," I said. But that was before the stroke. Before I found myself sitting in a chair I didn't choose, eating food I didn't recognize, waiting for people who never came. The room fell still. Turns out dignity's quieter than that. It's in being seen, heard, not managed, not minimized. I paused. Let the silence breathe. I'm not here to blame my daughter. She did what fear told her to do. But I'm here to tell you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own story, you're not alone, someone in the back murmured, "Men." I finished with a small smile. They thought they were putting me away. Turns out they put me somewhere I finally remembered how to live. When I sat down, the room erupted not with applause like at a show, but with warm, quiet approval. The kind that lingers. The kind that says, "We see you." Later that week, I met Irene Matthews. She was sitting alone on a bench in the garden near the rose bushes. A straw hat tilted over her brow, a book resting closed on her lap. "Mind if I sit?" I asked. She looked up, studied me for a second, then nodded. "You're the man from the memory circle. The one who speaks like he doesn't waste words." "I try not to," I said, settling beside her. She extended a hand. "Irene. Used to teach literature. Retired from the University of Arizona." We spent the next hour discussing Steinbeck jazz records and whether hummingbirds were better than finches for morning company. Turns out Irene had come to Golden Pines just 6 months before me, after losing her sister, the only family she had left. They wanted to move me to assisted living in Milwaukee, she said. I said no. I'm old, not dead. There's a difference, I laughed. You sound like someone I'd enjoy having coffee with. She raised an eyebrow. Is that an offer? It is now. In the following weeks, a rhythm took shape. Mornings at the garden with Irene, afternoons in the workshop or chess with Dawn, evenings in the library, or sometimes just sitting alone on my balcony, watching the sun ease itself down behind the pines like a man who no longer had anything to prove. I started organizing a weekly veterans film night. We'd gather in the media room and watch old war films followed by discussion. Not about tactics or guns, but about what the movies got wrong. About how silence, sweat, and fear weren't cinematic, but they were real. Irene often came, though she'd always roll her eyes during the dramatic scenes. One evening, after watching The Best Years of Our Lives, she said, "You know what I like about you, Raymond? You're not trying to relive the past. You're just not ashamed of it." That sat with me for a long time. Maybe that's what reclamation really means, not trying to go back, but simply refusing to let others define what's left. One morning, as I was helping Miles move some chairs in the community room, he said, "Hey, Mr. Carlyle, someone asked for you at the front desk yesterday." Who? A girl named Emily. Said she was your granddaughter. I blinked. Stephanie's daughter. 19, maybe 20. She leave a message. Yeah, just said, "Tell Grandpa I'd like to come by." Not with Mom. Just me. I nodded slowly, something warm and wary blooming in my chest at the same time. Thanks, Miles. That evening, I sat on the balcony, Ruth's picture in my hand, thinking about what kind of man I wanted Emily to meet. Not a bitter man, not a broken one, but someone who'd chosen his last years instead of surrendering them. Someone she could call Grandpa with pride. Golden Pines didn't just give me a place to sleep. It gave me something far more radical, a second chance with no apology required. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you stop waiting for permission. Permission to live, to speak, to choose. For years, I didn't even realize I was waiting for Stephanie to call first. Waiting for someone to ask how I was instead of just assuming. Waiting for the right time to say I deserved more. Turns out there is no right time. Just now. And now I am free. Emily arrived on a Thursday. She didn't call in advance. Just showed up at the Golden Pines reception desk with a messenger bag slung over one shoulder and a nervous smile on her face. I was in the garden deadheading roses when Miles found me. "She's here," he said quietly. "And she's alone." I stood slowly, brushing my palms against my pant leg. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with something heavier. Hope, maybe. That delicate thing old men aren't supposed to admit still lives inside them. When I walked into the lobby, Emily was sitting by the window scrolling her phone. She looked up immediately. "Grandpa," she said, rising to her feet. "Emily," I replied, voice catching slightly. She hugged me quick but real, and then stepped back like she wasn't sure if she'd gone too far. "I hope it's okay I came," she said. "It's more than okay," I told her. "Let's sit." We took a seat on the bench just outside the main entrance under a shady pergola with vines starting to twist around the beams. The Arizona sun was kind that morning, filtered through the leaves. "I didn't want to come with Mom," Emily said. "She's still upset." and kind of embarrassed. Embarrassed she lost the house, I asked, not unkindly. No. Embarrassed she didn't see what you needed. I nodded, letting her words hang in the air for a bit. She told me you were being manipulated, Emily added, by some fancy lawyer in a luxury place trying to take advantage. I raised an eyebrow. And you believed that? She gave a half smile. Not really. Mom's voice got tight. Her eyes wouldn't stay still. That's how I knew something didn't sit right. Smart girl. What made you come? I asked. She hesitated, then said, 'Cause I remembered you. I remembered the grandpa who taught me how to tie knots on the back patio, who fixed my bookshelf when I broke it with a soccer ball, who always had hot chocolate on the stove when I came over after school. Her voice broke a little. I wanted to see if you were still that guy. I looked at her, really looked, and saw not a child anymore, but a woman trying to make sense of love, loyalty, and lies. I never stopped being him, I said. I just stopped being visible for a while. She swallowed hard. This place, it's beautiful, peaceful. It's mine, I said. That's the difference. She was quiet for a while, then asked, Do you hate her? Your mother. Emily nodded. No, I said. I don't hate her. I was disappointed. But hate is just a leash that keeps you tethered to what hurt you. I'm too old to wear that kind of collar. Emily smiled, blinking back tears. I'm glad you're here, Grandpa. So am I replied. And you're always welcome. We sat in silence a bit longer. The kind that doesn't need to be filled. The kind that feels like healing. Before she left, she asked if she could come again next week. Maybe bring a book to read together. Only if you promise it's not something written after 1990, I joked. She laughed. Deal. Then she hugged me again, longer this time, and whispered, Thank you for not giving up. I held her tighter. I was close, I said. But then I remembered I wasn't done teaching. That evening, I returned to the wood shop and finished the small box I'd been carving all month. It wasn't anything fancy. Just a smooth, square container with a lid that fit snug and a groove along the edge shaped like a folded American flag. Inside, I placed 3 things: a photo of Ruth in her yellow dress, the crayon drawing Stephanie made when she was 5, a copy of the independent medical report Peter helped me obtain, signed, stamped, dated. I locked the box, slid it onto the top shelf of my closet, and wrote a small label, for Emily when she's ready. Not as an inheritance, but as a record, proof that once a man her age stood tall, not because someone let him, but because he remembered how to do it on his own. The invitation came in a thick white envelope delivered to my door, with a gold foiled seal from the front office of Golden Pines. Inside was a single card, simple but elegant. You are cordially invited to the annual Golden Pines Veterans Day tribute. In honor of those who served with honor and continue to live with dignity. Featuring Raymond J. Carlisle, United States Marine Corps. I stared at the words for a long time. Not because they surprised me, Veronica had hinted at it, but because it had been years since anyone wrote my name down to be remembered rather than filed away to be managed. The event took place in the main hall, a beautiful, high-ceilinged room with tall windows and warm lighting. The staff had transformed it into something that felt more like a chamber concert than a nursing home gathering. Residents arrived dressed in their best. Some wore medals. Some brought photos of the people they served with. Some carried nothing but the memories etched into the quiet lines around their eyes. There were speeches short, sincere. A local high school choir sang "America the Beautiful" and made more than a few of us blink fast and look down. Then it was my turn. Veronica introduced me simply Marine. Father. Writer of second chapters. I walked up to the podium slowly, cane in hand, not because I needed it today, but because it reminded me of where I'd come from. I looked out over the crowd, over Luther and Marty and Irene who nodded from the front row, over Emily sitting between two other grandchildren. Someone had brought her hands folded neatly in her lap. And then I spoke. I was put in a facility once, not because I was dying, but because someone decided I was done living. They meant well. Most people do. But meaning well isn't the same as doing right. Doing right takes courage. And sometimes doing right means saying, no, I'm not finished. Not with my story. Not with my choices. Not with my dignity. I paused, letting the silence carry the weight of the words. If you are here today, and you have ever been made to feel small for aging, for needing help, for forgetting something, or simply for outliving someone else's usefulness for you, let me say this clearly. You are not a burden. You are a whole person with history, complexity, and worth. Your life doesn't expire because someone else is in a hurry. There was no applause, not yet. Just stillness. That sacred kind where every soul in the room stops pretending they're somewhere else. I ended simply. They called it a nursing home. But I found a place to stand again. A place where stories are told before they're silenced. Where life stories don't end, they evolve. Then I stepped down, and the room stood. They didn't clap. They stood. One by one, quietly, gently, as if they were honoring something more than me, as if they were honoring themselves too. Afterward, we gathered in the courtyard. Soft jazz played under the string lights. Someone had brought pecan pie and lemonade. Don gave me a half hug and muttered, "You made me feel like I should go shave and sign up again." Marty raised his glass. To Raymond, the last man standing. Irene, sitting next to me, smiled. No. The first man re-standing. Emily found me just before sundown. She didn't say much, just pulled a folded piece of paper from her bag and handed it to me. It was a poem, one she wrote. For Grandpa, who taught me how to tie knots and how to untie the ones that wrap around your voice. I didn't cry, but my hands shook a little when I folded it back. "I'm proud of you," I said. She smiled. "You're the reason I started writing again." That night I sat out on my balcony and breathed the pine air. The moon was high. The garden below shimmered silver. I thought of Ruth, of course, of what she'd say if she could see this moment. I imagined her saying, "You finally came home." And maybe I had, not to a place, but to myself. To the man who still stood for something even when no one asked him to. To the man who refused to disappear quietly. So here's what I leave behind: not a house, not a trust fund, not a safe full of silence. I leave behind the truth that you can start again at 78, that you can say no to being shelved, that you can still matter even when the world has moved on. And if you're out there sitting in a quiet room holding your breath, wondering if you're still allowed to take up space, let me say it for you. Yes, yes you are. You always were. You always will be. This was my life. This was my fight. This is my story, and this was my liberation. If this story stirred something in, you don't keep it to yourself. Have you ever felt discarded, overlooked, or silenced just because you got older? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let your story be heard.